What's up, guys? I said I would make a video about how to pronounce the French R, so let's give it a shot. The French R is not like the English R, where we say R in the middle of the mouth, similar to a W. And it's not like the Spanish R, where you use the tip of the tongue, similar to an L. Instead, it's more like the back of the tongue. If you imagine, here's the roof of your mouth, here's the tongue. This would be the tip for the Spanish sound. This would be the French. You're moving the back of your tongue to not quite close off and prevent any air, but making a smaller and smaller opening to create some vibration. You might think of a purr sound of a cat going That's a good starting point. Sometimes, by the way, the French R sounds like another cat sound, a hiss, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, there are two sounds. That's what I just mentioned, and that's something that seems scary at first, but it's really true of more letters than you would think. Let me give an example in English. Let's say the word house. And with the word house, that S is S. But what if it turns into houses? When we make this sound, or when we make this word plural, we might change this guy without thinking about it. I don't say houses, I say houses. This S changed sound, and it changed sound in a specific way, which is called a voiced sound. It was first unvoiced with no vocal cords. It was S, making the air go through your teeth or tongue or any opening and go S. And then it became voiced to become Z. The same thing with vocal cord action added on. You might even touch your neck or your larynx to see that activate. Now, a lot of sounds are like that. A lot of letters are like that. In English, we have the with a voiced, and then we have health with an unvoiced th. Okay, and in French, a lot of sounds are the same, including the R. So let's get into some examples. The first word you might say every day is bonjour, and the R at the end of that is pretty mild. It doesn't really stand out much, but it's voiced. You have the vowels leading up to it. All vowels are voiced, and there's no reason to change that. You might think the voiced version is just kind of the default for the R. Bonjour, and it's kind of hard to do that sound, right? It's kind of hard to do that where the back of your tongue is almost closing the opening, but not quite. And so what I recommend as a practice is you just don't try to do it subtle. Don't try to do it mild. Go all out and make a big purr sound. You go bonjour, and then you'll know what's happening and what parts are involved and how to do it and how to use the strength to do it. Then you can pull it back. Then you can say bonjour, bonjour, with just a little bit of something at the end. But it's hard to do that little bit of something if you've never done the big version. Okay, I've heard the same thing from French people learning English. One of the problems, if you're a French person learning English, is that TH sound I had a minute ago. If you're trying to say th, it's pretty tough, and so you really go all out. You practice sticking your tongue out, biting it, going th, or th, and then once you know, okay, this is what it's like, this is what's involved, now I can pull it back. Okay, now I can do the mild, normal, standard version that you might see in a word. However, that R, that bonjour, is not the only R, so let's talk about the other one. And it happens the same as we saw in English. Let's go back to that real quick. House became houses because the nearby consonants influence whatever they're next to. So House, that S on its own, it was kind of the default sound for an S, which happens to be unvoiced. But it came next to this guy, which is, what we do for plurals is almost always a voiced sound, unless it's like cats or something. And so the Z influenced this nearby consonant to become a Z itself. I think it's called assimilation in linguistics terms, but it's pretty easy to recognize once you start to see it. And obviously, it's easy to do because we naturally do it. It would be very hard to turn off the sounds and turn on and off the vocal cords in the middle of a word. So, for example, in French, the word, how do I do the accent mark? The word très, classic answer to how are you? You might say très bien or something. We have a T next to an R, and the T is not voiced. The T is there's no vocal cords, and it's a pretty strong sound that really influences the ones around it. T next to an R means that the R is going to take that cue, it's going to take that influence, and it's also going to be unvoiced. So instead of going with the purr, you're going to go with the cat, changing to a hiss. Okay, pretty much the same thing. The back of your tongue is almost closing and you're pushing air through, but it might take a little more effort, and it should, because like I said for the other one, you should practice the big, over the top, loud version. You shouldn't try to go très, you should go très. And once you've practiced that, then you can pull it back. But you won't know where the line is unless you've crossed it. You won't know what it feels like unless you've done too much. And so if you want to say très, then you can say très. But trying to do that little subtle thing is harder than trying to do the big crazy version. It's not just if the R is after a letter, it happens when the R is before a letter. So let's go to another super common word, merci. When you say merci, the R is not voiced. You don't say merci because the R is influenced by the consonant right next to it, the C. S is not voiced. It's the same sound as the S in house, right? Just because it's a different letter, it doesn't matter. Merci, you do that juicy hiss R instead of the purr R. And again, you won't think about this if you're doing it smoothly. If you're a French person speaking French, you don't think about, the rule, the linguistic assimilation, the vocalization of the vowel. No, you're just thinking, all right, I'm squishing these sounds together. There's only one way it makes sense. I can't turn my vocal cords on and off 5 times a second. You just say merci. And that juicy R is a recognizable part of the word. If you hear somebody go merci, you go, that sounds French. That sounds natural. That sounds how it's supposed to sound. So fit that into your practice. Remember that there are 2 versions, and they're based on whatever it's next to. So if you're next to a C, a T, a P, you're probably going to be voiceless. Otherwise, you're probably going to have the normal voice of an R, which should flow into some vowels. Bonjour. What's another one? Mère. If it was just the word for mother, Mère. It's got a nice voice to it. Even though it seems like it's the same as merci, it's not, because of that other consonant infecting the R with its sound scheme. So I'll end it now before this becomes a 10-minute video, and we'll see if that helps anybody.